So we're here to talk about some great success with our homicide unit and the arrests we've made this year. To start things off, we're going to have Mayor Keller kick it off, and then we have Interim CEO Lawrence Ryle talk, and then Chief Medina, and then we'll have Deputy Commander Hartsock speak, Sergeant Fox, and then Sonia with Crime Stalkers will talk a little about their role in a lot of the successes. Mayor?
Well, thank you, Gilbert, and good morning. I want to begin by just sharing a little bit about some of the background of what we're announcing today. You know, it was about a year ago through our MCI, the Metro Crime Initiative, where we all tried to, we meaning every piece of the criminal justice system, tried to commit to trying to doing things in a better way to try and repair the holes in that system that has been letting us down. And there have been some successes. There's still a long road to go. And we want to talk today about some of the commitments that APD made and that we made at the City of Albuquerque. And we have, I think, a sea change in terms of what we're seeing with respect to arrests for homicides. And so we also are working a lot more with victims. And so by way of refresher, we have a victims advocate who helps families while detectives are working on their cases. That has gotten a lot of tremendous feedback and has also led to, I think, a much smoother investigative process. We also try and do a lot more through digital and social media, and so we're ramping up our expertise on analyzing all that material, which of course is just part of all of our society, including crime. We also have linked the technology investments that we've made to homicide investigations. So utilizing our ShotSpotter technology, which is now in every quadrant of the city, utilizing NIBIN, something we really invested heavily in about 4 years ago, and even using our newer surveillance cameras and license plate readers so that we can actually, you know, we get a description of a car, we can match that to different makes and models, and then we're tracking where that car, where we know it left the scene, and then we get a license plate, and once we have a license plate, we can get an address, things of this nature. So that kind of integrated crime fighting and investigating approach is what our department is continuing to lean into, and it's starting to finally bear fruit, which is great, I know, for the public and their confidence. I think it is demonstrated that we're there supporting the officers with the right technology that our investigators need. And of course, first and foremost, for the victims. It's saying that we hear you, it's saying that we care, and we are going to hold people accountable. And so what we want to share with you today is that our entire investigative team, many of which are here, and so on behalf of the city, I want to thank you for what you've done in general in your career, but also specifically what we've been able to accomplish recently, because starting with our folks who've done this, we have charged or arrested 47 suspects tied to murders since the beginning of the year. That is almost the exact opposite of the statistics that we used to have with respect to timely arrest and charges. This is a powerful signal to criminals in our city that you will be held accountable. We will catch you, and we are demonstrating that right now. And of course, that also means for victims and for the justice system, we're going to do our part. We've got a lot of holes and a lot more work to do, but we're showing that we actually can do this. And it's sending the right signal to victims that we're going to fight for justice, and also to criminals that we are going to catch you. So we want to hear with a little bit more details on this, because we're not doing this alone by any sense of the word. And so let me bring up our interim CA, Lawrence Ryle, for a minute on this.
Thank you, Mayor. And it is amazing. This is an amazing accomplishment, and it really is a concerted effort to focus on these issues and solve these cases. Let me just say that in addition to the homicide detectives who work to build and solve these cases, we want to acknowledge the investigative support detectives who located and arrested these suspects. Only 3 out of the 47 are still wanted. Only 3 out of the 47. These violent offenders are going to be caught. We know that we're going to be caught. Why? Because we are really focused on this, and we also have great partnerships with the U.S. Marshal Service, State Police, Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, and other agencies who have helped us out. So as the mayor said, this is really a focused effort on ensuring that we work with each other and support each other in this effort. So again, congratulations to all of you who are in the field doing this work and for doing it every day. And it certainly shows the results are really beginning to pay the fruits of your labor. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And before we bring up the chief, I just want to add too, whether it's the entities that Lawrence mentioned, or it's the FBI or other smaller agencies. This is like literally the sort of one Albuquerque approach. And also, look, witnesses. Thank you for coming forward. Thank you for calling Crime Stoppers. For folks who were able to upload things like cell phone footage and things like this in a much faster, more efficient way than we were able to several years ago. And so all of those kinds of things we're now finally really utilizing. And so hopefully those times of people being frustrated because we have all this footage of someone and we know where they live and et cetera, but we can't identify them or we can't arrest them. Hopefully we've moved past that, and that's really what these numbers reflect. So I'll wrap up my section by just saying that we're going to keep at it. We know that there's always also going to be one-off cases that are very hard, where individuals flee and so forth, or there's different situations where we don't have good footage. So this is never an exact science, but we are doing much, much better. And I also want to mention that we are going to be reconvening the Metro Crime Initiative. We'll talk about it then, but the Metro Crime Initiative has moved the needle in a number of fronts in the criminal justice system, but there's a lot further to go. And with a 60-day legislative session coming up in the fall, this summer is when we really have to get to work. And so Damon Martinez, our former U.S. attorney, is going to be heading that up, along with some folks from APD, and again, all the other law enforcement partners that joined with us last time. So we're going to keep at it, but we did want to pause and acknowledge the positive changes that have been made, the impact that it's had, and acknowledge the investigators and officers who've helped make this happen. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our chief, who's been pushing hard on this since he became chief, Chief Harold Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for being here. First of all, I want to get started by saying we would not be here today talking about this success if it wasn't for the men and women in the back of this room. Our homicide unit has stepped up to the challenge. They have worked hard. They've made changes. And they're working as a team to solve these cases. But that teamwork goes beyond that. That teamwork then extends to our investigative support unit, who then goes out and apprehends and finds these individuals. And later today, hopefully we'll get some more good news, as I know their cases are processing through and going forward. I want to thank the leadership of the homicide unit, all the way from the sergeants through their deputy chief. Every day, their deputy chief and their commander, George Vega, get a phone call from me, and I ask them, what do we have in the pipe today? What are we pushing? What are we expecting this week? Every day, they're being asked to see how hard they could push their team. Great coaches and great leaders push their teams to do extraordinary things, and that's what we have occurring in the homicide unit right now. When Mayor Keller started the Metro Crime Initiative last year, a state senator released a report that laid much of the blame for last year's violent crime on the Albuquerque Police Department and prosecutors. The senator said the lack of arrests, particularly homicide arrests, was leading to an accountability gap, which he said we were failing to deliver swift and certain justice. I went to Santa Fe and I outlined all of the things we were doing to improve investigations. We started a detective academy. We started giving more resources to detectives. But just like the reform efforts which we improved upon last week that were in the news, it takes time for us to get where we want to be. It takes time to build a team. It takes time to create cohesiveness where a team works together so well. As the mayor just announced, we are seeing the results of that today. Since January, 47 suspects have been arrested or charged for their role in Albuquerque murders. In my time at APD, I do not recall a short period of time where we had more homicide arrests than we have had in the previous 5 months. Since I took over as chief, I prioritized support for investigations, but we also pushed our teams to do extraordinary things, but we also worked to give them the tools and everything they needed to do so. And sometimes this included adding support staff that assists them in gathering digital evidence. This includes giving them the support staff they need in more leadership, more training, and a lot of different ways that we've utilized technology to help solve some of these crimes. The results, these arrests, reflect the hard work of detectives and everyone who supports them. They carry the heaviest burdens of all investigations within the city of Albuquerque. From start to finish, they deserve the credit for each and every one of these 47 arrests. I know we are headed in the right direction. Last fall, when we temporarily assigned investigators from across the department to help robbery and homicide tackle a huge caseload, I started hearing from the courts and others that had never seen so many warrants going for court approval, judge approval, district attorney approval. Now we are seeing their work pay off. Arrest warrants, solid cases, and great teamwork. So above all, as we finish today's press conference, I want to make sure that we recognize the hard work of all the detectives that have brought us to the point where we have swift, certain punishment, and we're doing our part to ensure that everything is being done to lower the violent crime rates within the city of Albuquerque. And I hope that the rest of the system takes a look upon themselves to see where they need to make adjustments or where they may need to improve. And I'm hoping that this second part of the Metro Crime Initiative can help us identify further places where others can also self-reflect and improve upon their processes to make this city safer. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Deputy Commander Hartzog.
Hi, my name is Deputy Commander Kyle Hartsock. I'm the Deputy Commander in our Criminal Investigations Division. And I do want to start off and just echo what everyone has said today. But the 12 or so detectives you see in the back there, they are some of the most obsessive personality cops in the entire department. Because to successfully work a homicide case is to be obsessed. You have to learn every person in the investigation, time of day, locations, know where all your evidence is. It's very time consuming. And all of these 47 arrests you see up here are a result of their dedication and their professional obsession with solving these cases. And who do they want to solve it for? It's the families who lost someone. So we can't understate the type of work it is. It's a different type of cop work than anywhere else in the department, what we ask them to do. It's also the type of crimes that have the most at stake, right? Some cases are a little bit easier to solve, some are harder, but someone has died, someone has lost someone forever, so the stakes are always the highest when it's a homicide investigation. So these detectives have to work under that pressure. What I also want to talk to you today about is just a little bit more about who our suspects are. These 47 suspects that have been arrested or charged right now outnumber the amount of victims that the police department has investigated this year. As Chief pointed out, this is one of the rare times we are arresting more people than new cases are coming our way. This is a significant achievement for these detectives and all the support units that help them out. Everyone from the crime lab to their digital intelligence team, ISU, but also the prosecutor's office. A prosecutor has to approve every one of these warrants. What we're building through training at the Detective Academy and elsewhere is a really consistent investigative product that a prosecutor can be predictive of and know what it's going to look like and have confidence that we are going to give them a good, high-quality product. Of the suspects so far, only about 9% are juveniles, but we see a much higher percentage of victims that are juveniles. Almost 1/5 of the suspects are female. Some are domestic violence related, some are robbery related. Robberies of individuals is still one of the biggest categories of events that are leading up to homicides that we see year over year, as well as domestic violence. Sorry. I just lost my note there. But really, with that being said, we'll answer any questions you guys have on the suspects or their demographics. But again, it was really great teamwork all the way around to get these 47 people charged or in custody. Sergeant.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. A quick thing here. My name is Sergeant David Fox. I'm one of the sergeants with the Albuquerque Police Department Homicide Unit. And I just wanted to kind of introduce you to a little bit more about the detectives that are involved here and kind of what they do. I know everyone usually sees on the news the call-out bus and maybe a detective walking past, but I wanted to give you a little peek into that. I want to tell you about the passion that the homicide detectives have for these cases. I want to tell you how many days they miss with their families. I want to find the words why they love their work despite many challenges. But I have to be brief. So what I'd like to do is give you a little bit more insight into the responsibility that these detectives bear. The detectives in the Albuquerque Police Department Homicide Unit often have to give next of kin notifications, delivering the terrible news of their loved one's death. This involves communication and guidance for the families victims on the worst day of their life. Giving next of kin is not just informing the families their loved ones of their loved one's death. It's that detective adopting that family into their own lives and knowing that that grieving family is counting on them. Typical homicide investigations always include non-typical relationships, with many people surrounding the investigation. They work tirelessly, often for many hours at a time, to find the next critical piece of evidence to crack open the seams of truth. They are called at all hours of the night and all hours of the day to respond to many facets of the investigation. Sometimes for a simple interview, sometimes to plan, construct, and execute complex search warrants that require services from the other units in the police department, such as the SWAT team and ISU that we talked about, who we can't thank enough for all of their help. They also recognize the trend of violence occurring in the city with our youth. And I know Deputy Commander Hartsock gave you a number there, and sometimes the perception of that is more valuable than the actual number, so it's not lost on us. Detectives are able to arrest recently, detectives were able to arrest a homicide suspect who shot a victim outside a bar downtown. In this case, the detective in charge wrote countless search warrants, constructed operations plans, and ultimately was able to draft arrest documents for this suspect. This took many hours of work. The work involved with these cases can take months sometimes. These detectives are surrounded by other elements of the police department to assist them with digital evidence, physical evidence, and even filing of search warrants. As mundane as that sounds, when you have 42 search warrants on one case to file, that can take a couple days. So that's very important. This arrest is one of about 45 other arrests, or 47, I guess, yeah, that the unit made during this year. The detectives were also helping to mentor and train the new detectives as they come into the unit. We're working to have 16 detectives. That's the goal for the near future. And every detective goes through a detective academy, an OJT process, a mentorship program, and that's just the beginning of their learning process. They're constantly learning from each other and adopting each other's styles to be more effective for the case. So, in closing, I just hope this gives you all a glimpse into the extensive work and passion that these homicide detectives experience every day. And thank you all for your time. Thank you, Chief and Mayor. Appreciate it. Sonia?
Good morning. My name is Sonia Marcus. I'm the Crime Stoppers liaison with the Albuquerque Police Department. Crime Stoppers has been around since 1976, and it started here in Albuquerque. Just this year alone, we've received over 800 tips, and at least 100 of those or more have been related to homicides. The most recent arrest would be Samuel Archuleta. We had a tipster who saw the news of the story of him murdering his roommates, noticed him in Durango, Colorado, and reported it to Crime Stoppers. So this definitely goes to show how the media plays a big part in this. With you guys airing our stories, our bulletins that we send out on a daily basis, you're helping us reach many people that may have not even known what's going on here in Albuquerque. So thank you for that. The Crime Stoppers Board recently increased their reward from $1,000 to $2,500 for homicide. So again, the more we can get this out to the public and remind them to report this information to Crime Stoppers, they can remain anonymous. It helps the investigators follow leads and locate these fugitives. Again, this program has just been around, and it's a really great program, and it works in our community. So we just urge everybody to use it, to call Crime Stoppers. We work well with you guys on the media. We post a lot on the social media on offenders that we could possibly be looking for. The Metro 15 offenders too, we do offer a reward on them up to $1,000. So that goes out weekly as well. So again, just thank you for everything that you guys do for the detectives that follow up on the leads and the tips that we get daily.
A couple of things I'm going to close with before we take questions is, Sergeant Fox brought up a good point. These investigations take months. And I think that, sometimes there's a misconception. People watch TV and, in 1 hour, they solved the homicide case and somebody's in custody and they're on their way to jail. Times have changed. Years ago, there wasn't digital evidence that needed to be gathered. And our cases take a whole lot longer, but they're a whole lot stronger because of this. So I know at times there's individuals are frustrated, families are waiting for answers. They know there's suspects out there because they've already heard. But I just want to remind the public that it does take our detectives sometimes to build strong cases, because the last thing we want is to build a case that fails in the home stretch in the courts. So thank you to our detectives for their patience and all their hard work in getting those 42 warrants written in order to be able to get to the point of an arrest. I think that one of the big criticisms APD has faced over the years is that for years our homicide clearance rate has hovered somewhere near around 50 to 60%, depending on year to year. Right now, as of last Friday, our clearance rate was 97%. It was well above 100% for most of the year. And if you don't know how clearance rates work, it's the number of homicides solved that year, even if it was previous year homicides. So it does lead to a misconception of individuals sometimes questioning, like, hey, how could you be over 100? Basically, we've solved just as many homicides this year as we've had this year, and that's how they're measured. That's not our standard. That's a standard that's set forth by the FBI and is a national standard that all law enforcement agencies follow. So I want to thank you guys for your hard work. That is a great accomplishment. That's one of the highest clearance rates this far into the year that we've ever seen during my time at the Albuquerque Police Department. And once again, it's attributed to teamwork everywhere from the administration ensuring that the funding is there for the technology or whatever else we need at the police department, all the way down to the detectives who are out there working with some of our civilian support staff to get the information needed to clear some of these cases. So thank you guys for all your hard work, and we'll take any questions at this point. No question, yes.
While it's great that we have this high clearance rate, is it really deterring crime as much as you would like to? Because our homicide numbers are still on track of last year, and last year we did set a record of the number of homicides.
We got to recognize that the Albuquerque Police Department can't do everything. That everything is not within our control. We have to ensure that we remember that there are certain portions we're in control of. We're in control of swift, certain punishment. We're in control of ensuring that justice is brought to families. And I think the mayor is doing a great job of organizing the rest of the criminal justice system. We know that a lot of our homicides this year focus around mental health. We know that some of them focus around domestic violence. And unfortunately, this is a trend that's going on across the country. And I think it's directly related to the pandemic and how we're coming out of it. I don't see anywhere in the near future that homicide rates are going to be decreasing. We're not seeing any major cities having a huge decrease, and we're nothing special compared to the rest of them. So I think that it will have an impact eventually, because we are getting some individuals who are involved in multiple activities that were leading to multiple homicides. We did break up a crew that were involved in multiple robberies that had were responsible for 2 homicides. So we will see a decrease at some point with some individuals, but I just think that we do have so many things occurring in society that it's really difficult to say that we're going to be seeing a decrease. Does that answer your question?
The unit hasn't grown a lot as compared to like previous years as far as like the amount of detectives. I was curious, what was keeping us from this clearance rate in previous years? Like what was wrong before that?
There's a lot of different reasons. I think that the unit, we had it at 12. One of the first call-outs I went and I spoke to Sergeant Fox at the command post, and he said, sir, we need to get more and we need to get other resources. Another big piece was understanding the process at the DA's office and how to get our warrants approved. And, Deputy Commander Hartsock was brought in for that. We wanted to make cases move faster, bringing in the digital forensics team that goes through all the digital evidence. So I think it's not just adding support staff to the sworn side of detectives. It's us looking at the process itself and where we could add in resources to help everybody communicate and move things more swiftly. We're restricted with the amount of sworn officers we have, and this is something we're doing that we'll talk about in the near future. Across the board in the department, we're seeing where we could find support staff that will get information faster to officers to help them clear their cases. So there's been a variety of changes, not just within the detectives, the mounted detectives, the quality of their investigations, the Detective Academy. I mean, we have Detective Coleman back there who solved his first homicide case, a case out of Long Beach where he flew out there. That was his first case after completing the Detective Academy. So it's just been a whole revamp of the system from top to bottom, looking how we could make improvements, but then the team being cohesive as a unit and getting results and working hard. In the end, you could have all the training and everything you want, but if your detectives aren't committed to this and working hard, you're not going to see results. And that's what I think we have, is a committed, hard-working group of detectives. Any other questions?
Yeah, it was mentioned bringing in like 16 detectives into the department, as well as kind of how technology and resources are playing a part in solving these cases. I guess, is there a backlog, and how many cases are we looking at right now in terms of solving?
What do you think?
Well, so I can tell you, we've looked at all of our homicide cases, and we look at the cases where the detectives aren't in the homicide unit anymore, and we've already separated those out, and they get their own separate review and audit conducted. We're using retired detectives under contract to help us triage these cases and go through them, to give us an assessment of it, to make sure if we got to push things forward on evidence processing or certain warrants that we can do it. And they help get this case teed up so that we can assign it to one of these detectives in the back. But instead of just giving them the full case folder, we're going to go through it, clean it up, get it much more ready to hit go on. So we've recognized that as well, and some of these solves that you see are directly from those cases. Once we go through them and we realize what we might have, we turn it into closure and arrest, sometimes relatively very quick.
And I guess, is there a number, like an estimate of how many cases we're looking at?
No, I can work with Gilbert though and try to get you a number.
And then you guys mentioned 47, but then I was counting as it's like only 46 on there. It's still 46 to 47, just to confirm.
We'll provide you the breakdown. There's basically, I think, 45 arrests. There are 2 people who were deceased before there was one committed suicide, obviously, 2 weeks ago. Another one was killed in an officer-involved shooting after the homicide. So there's little variances like that. But 47 people who either were arrested or would have been arrested with charges.
And one thing real quick is, going back to the question about what's changed, is the unit's changed all the way through. Sergeant Fox received help with, another sergeant within the unit, and Sergeant Roscone came in and he's been assisting him. We have a new lieutenant. Lieutenant Del Greco came in. He's the new lieutenant overseeing homicide. You have a new deputy commander. You have a new commander, Commander Vega, and Deputy Chief Barker has brought it all together. She has both homicide, ISU, and she's done a phenomenal job of bringing the team and creating accountability. So, when I took over as chief, we replaced 2 commanders in investigative units. It's no secret that as a deputy chief, I was very concerned about the direction of our investigative sections, and that was the first day action. It was making some leadership changes in those key areas. And I want to thank Deputy Chief Barker for taking everything by the rein and making sure that the changes are occurring and that she's there to support her people. She actually went out and she's had lunch with almost all of her sergeants to get to know them and to make sure that she knows what the needs are at the ground level. That's true leadership. That's somebody who's wanting to know what's going on with the people at the ground level and making sure that they get what they need. So thank you, Deputy Chief, for all your hard work. Yes?
So you said that it was a 97% clearance rate this year. What was last year or years prior average? And what would you say, if there was one thing you could point to, has contributed to that success?
I think the success is, like we talked about, it's like the whole system as a whole, the changes we've made. I think they feel supported. We try to give them everything they need, through good leadership. When they were doing great, we brought all the detectives in. We made sure we provided them lunch and we congratulated them for all their hard work. We've given them the resources with strong leadership who cares, who goes out, makes sure that they're hearing what's needed. We're giving them additional training. We've given them the technology. We're teaching them the technology. So I think it's just a system as a whole coming together that's led to this increase in clearance rates. And I think the last 2 years, the clearance rates were somewhere around 55 and 60%. So it is a sharp increase. I know we're only halfway through the year, but Commander Vega, Deputy Chief Barker, I talked to them and I've challenged them. Our goal this year is I want 100 homicides solved. And I want well over 100 arrests, and that's our goal. We may come short of it, but we're going to do our very best to achieve that goal. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the goal is 16 right now to bring on new detectives. Where are we at right now? How many detectives do we have right now?
13? 13. 13 detectives. So it's bringing on 3 more. And they have the openings. And you got to remember that sometimes they're a little higher, sometimes they're a little lower. We consistently have turnover within the department, whether it's in force investigations, whether it's in homicide, whether it's in SWAT. People shuffle their way through the department or they get promoted. So we do have openings from time to time, but we're going to try to always keep it staffed at around 16.
I have a question about some more recently cases that aren't solved. We had noticed there's been like 3 or 4 where like someone was shot in a car or they showed up in a car with a gunshot wound. We were curious if the unit is seeing an uptick in road rage cases, and if so, if they're attributing that to anything or trying to tackle that.
You know, I think the 2 biggest things we see is sometimes we see road rage incidents, but sometimes you have individuals that went somewhere to commit a criminal act or to do some kind of transaction, and these individuals end up getting transported in a vehicle. So you see both. You see both. We know we've had some road rage incidents, but we also have those incidents where individuals are simply transferred in the motor vehicle back to the hospital. So you're seeing a little bit of both.
Okay, so there hasn't been like an uptick in road rage.
I don't see a huge increase.
No, there's only one real true roadway one right now that we believe is just that and nothing else. The other ones, like Chief said, we think are something else, but they're in a car. But it's something that with the NIBIN program and the crime lab and everything we look at, we look for trends constantly to identify do we have the same bad actor or bad actors committing repeat crimes.
Could you say what the biggest trend is right now as far as 2022, like what you're seeing?
It's the same almost every year. It's robberies of persons selling drugs or selling guns illegally. It's also people that have emotional outburst problems and they have a gun in their hand. So we call it individual disrespect. Right? It's just you looked at me the wrong way and I'm all done with it.
Any other questions? Anybody else, maybe?
Okay. So we will be going forward with the Metro Crime Initiative, and that's actually, we had a meeting this morning talking about those sorts of things like road rage and gun violence. So we'll have a lot more to say about that moving forward. So that's a good segue to the MCI. Thank you, everybody.
I assume you guys are going to send something out. Yeah. Could you send out the previous year's clearances too?
Yeah.